and EduCake, we're trying to solve the homework problem of, UK schools at first. So teachers spend about 10 hours a week on average marking homework, and that's 2 million hours a week across the whole of the UK, which is quite a lot of time. And actually, can they give good feedback? Can the kids learn? Do they actually like doing homework? Is it useful? Probably not, is the answer to most of those questions. So we've got an online platform that allows teachers to set homework from a bank of questions matched to their exam boards, and then the students complete it on their phones and their tablets, on their PCs and Macs, whatever. They get feedback instantly, they get told what the topics they're good at and what they're not good at, and then the teacher gets a really quick and easy to read report on what is good and what is not good and what questions they're struggling with, so that they can spend more time teaching rather than marking. That's about it. Science at the moment, but hopefully internationally in the rest of the subjects soon.
Want to just introduce yourselves? It's probably easier.
Hi, my name's James. I'm a youth worker. I work for an organisation called Dragon Hall, you can see the sign right back there. We are a charity that's setting up an entity called London. I'm quite proud of the fact that we have the website london.london. The idea behind that is that there are a group of people who are not in this room who potentially are being left behind by the advances that are happening within digital and tech. We want to make sure that everybody's included so that no one is left behind. The idea behind that is that we will deliver 3 levels of programming: discovery, make and create. Discovery are taster sessions, a bit like this. If any of you haven't seen Oculus Rift or 3D printing, it's the first opportunity to see it. Make are deeper programs of learning that hopefully we'll be using Mozilla badges to accredit. And then create our social action programs, so young people looking at how technology can have an impact on the social issues that are important to them. We're launching a Kickstarter. It was due to be tomorrow, but we're waiting for Kickstarter to give us the green light. We've got to talk about Kickstarter tonight, actually. And it's a wonderful platform. For those people that don't know it, it revolutionised my personal life, my work life. It was a bit like going through Lewis's wardrobe in Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. It was just this whole other world that I had no idea that existed.
Hi, I'm Charlotte and I'm from Cinter. I co-founded Cinter with 2 of my colleagues, and it's basically a design and engineering consultancy that specialises in user-centred product and services. So one of the first products that we brought to market was an education tool for engineering and creativity. It's a construction set, and we went the Kickstarter route with that as well, which tends to be very popular for getting products to market. But I'm also a tutor at Queen Mary University of London, and I go into schools and talk about anything from presentation skills through to STEM. That's me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. So, we have some, like I say, prepared questions. I'm going to ask one of them just to get us started, but please be thinking of your own. So is this an age-old question? I've already had a couple of rants with people, I would like to think, this evening about them, about whether technology itself and all the things that we've been heard and seen and everything else on Kickstarter that I'm now going to go and have a look at, whether technology itself, whether these things themselves can drive educational change, or whether there are certain conditions around kind of education that make it very hard for these sorts of products and services and kind of really exciting but shiny things that seem to come somehow from a different kind of set of assumptions to what the education system runs on, whether or not we're doomed for them to always bounce off, or whether or not you think they can actually gain some kind of traction and really change the way that teachers and schools and young people kind of do education with a big E, as somebody called it earlier. And whether you've had an experience of like where you've really kind of seen real traction. And I think you'll have quite different perspectives. So if you could all just answer that question while people think of those.
So I think there are quite big problems in getting technology into schools, and this is largely due to the busyness of teachers. So teachers, they work an average of 50 hours a week, plus maybe another 5 to 10 hours doing other things around the school. And the job isn't just a kind of desk job where you can get 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour break, mental break during the day. So teachers are quite tired, and they don't really have, and they're under pressure, so they don't have the extra capacity usually to take risks. And that, I think that is also because of the pressures that they're under in terms of marking and an assessment hitting targets. Now, whether that's a bad thing or a good thing, I'm not sure. But I think there are big problems. So even something like EduCake, which is a practical solution to a recognised problem, it's still very difficult to get to talk to a teacher. So we might spend a whole day calling schools, trying just to get to speak to one teacher, and it's really difficult. They don't have much time. And with the local education authorities, this is a bit technical, but bureaucratic. The local education authorities were abolished, and now academies, so schools exist. Schools run individually. So it used to be that each county, such as Kent, would have an advisor who would look into things like this, and that doesn't exist anymore. They've all gone. So it's a very difficult place to get things going, I think.
It's a fragmented market in lots of ways. James, what about from a youth work perspective? Because different kind of set of assumptions underpinning the work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, are there any youth workers in the room? No, there are never any youth workers. We've all been sacked by... actually, just as a point, 2,000 jobs and 350 youth centres have been closed over the last 5 years, with probably many more to come in the next 2. So, the thing about non-formal education is it offers a freedom that possibly lots of you that within formal education don't have. I don't need permission to go and meet any one of you who's got an interesting idea, an app developer. So I think one of the things that we've found is that it's been quite easy for us to go and work with universities, we work with UEL and UCL, to go and find the best and the brightest ideas and talent that we can then bring back to the young people that we work with. In terms of the point about how to engage young people with technology, we see it very much as a vehicle. I'm not a technologist, I'm probably the least technical person in this room, but we see this as a vehicle to be able to engage young people. And Paul, I think, referred to the wonder of one of the young people that was in his photo. We get that a lot when we take it out to learning disabled young people, to autistic young people, to homeless young people, who've never seen some of this stuff. So we're very lucky insofar as this is something that's almost a regular part of our working lives. But I think sometimes people can get a bit jaded. I mean, to a certain extent, we are, about actually the wonder that this can create for young people. And don't ever forget about that, because I think that that's something that's really important. And some of the things that, I mean, the guys from SAM, I was enthralled by that presentation. And I remember seeing on Kickstarter, and I now wish I backed you, but well, I backed 630 projects, so it's one of the ones that slipped through the net. So, but that's the capacity for young people to be inspired by this stuff. Please don't ever forget that. That's what I would say.
I suppose from my perspective, creating a product and trying to want to get it into schools myself, I feel like there's kind of a new movement. Initially it was thought that if you create a product and you market it to young people, they won't want to interact with it in the school environment and out of the school environment. But I think that's more being embraced, that actually you can do cool stuff in school and have fun at school, instead of and I think that's what's being pushed a lot here today, is that a lot of the good education comes out of having fun and having a playful experience. And I vouch 100% that education doesn't just happen in the classroom, it's actually happening in our day-to-day lives around us, and you spoke a bit about that earlier. But I also wanted to talk about entry points, and I think an entry point is the communities that are developing, not just in the classrooms as students, because there's certain particular influential students, like the one in the Ultimaker case, where he was a kind of brand ambassador for Ultimaker, making something really cool that all of his friends went, oh, that's really cool, I want to make that too. And you just need to, it's focusing on the right people and bringing them to the forefront to create a community to drive the product push and the education push.
Fantastic, thank you. Diverse range of responses, but I think really touches on everything from kind of the market right through to the classroom, which is where we will kind of live one way or the other. Questions from the floor. I know Ian has one. He's been working extremely hard to keep everyone's time, so he deserves one. And there's one or two more. Brilliant. Okay, Ian, what do you want to go first?
Yeah. So in addition to time on an iPad, I'm a teacher at a secondary school in London, in quite a deprived part of London. My question is, tonight we've seen a lot of ideas ranging from sort of EduCake, which is quite, I guess I said, incremental improvement, so you're taking a specific problem and trying to make it a little bit better, to like some really kind of awesome ideas with Sam, which was one of the coolest things I've seen all year, and stuff like Kano. And in terms of the future, and bearing in mind that schools are quite sort of bureaucratic and obviously the public sector, what do you think is going to have more impact on education realistically? Is it going to be the incremental improvement, so the little bits of adding a bit of technology here and there in schools, or are we going to need a much bigger sort of revolution and putting stuff like SAM and technology at the heart of the system? So is it going to be incremental, or is it going to be kind of revolutionary? What path do you think is the best way and why? That's my question.
Great question. Just to clarify, is it which path is the best way, or which one is most likely?
Best.
Best. Okay. What would we rather have? Disruptive, radical, whole-scale system change, innovation, or a gradual improvement of the current model through technology?
Okay. Well, I think if you look at the history of education, it's always been about incremental improvements. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, again, I'm not sure. I think in certain places there are people making bigger jumps, and then that follows through. You know, there's a typical early adopted cliche in truism. I think incremental improvements is what's going to happen. I think if you look at all the kind of radical changes that have been heralded over the last 15, 20 years in education, actually not that much has changed in 15 or 20 years in schools. Schools are taught relatively similar, but actually there are many different changes. So progress is tracked a lot more. So teachers are more aware of how children are doing, so then they can change their teaching in assessment for learning. They can change their teaching so it is better suited to all those different kids. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but actually it has a massive effect on all their what's the word? Learning outcomes, I think is the jargon. So I think in a way we can get we can really improve things in 10 years. I think that's for the kind of developed world where actually education is pretty good here. It's really good, and schools are much better than 20 years ago than they used to be. Whereas in the developing world countries, I think it's more likely that radical things such as the X Prize in education, I think for literacy and numeracy, I think they will have much more of an impact. But that's not too cynical.
Okay.
I would prefer it take the disruptive route, because I don't feel the way we're processed through education. I mean, I watch a lot of Ken Robinson's talks about education. He's like, why do we need to be put through on a conveyor belt? Because we're similar in age. Why can't we look more at people's ability and pushing the people who are more able together in one set, and then the people who are... Because then you can do targeted things, like say the girl who's looking kind of bored on the computer, you can put her with other people who are bored on the computer, and they can have a different method of teaching, rather than the people who are, programming in C++ and off there in the future. You can put them through together on their abilities. But I think probably most likely is to go the incremental way. But yeah.
I guess I sit in the Russell Brand camp on this, a complete anarchic overhaul. I'm going to be quite controversial here. I don't think our education system is particularly fit for purpose. I've talked to a few people about this. It was created at a time where we were trying to teach people how to work in cotton mills and steelworks and shipyards and coal mines. I don't think it's fit for the world that we're talking about now. So I would like to see a complete disruption, and actually, to a certain extent, that's what we're trying to do in the non-formal sector. Is actually using technology again as a vehicle, but giving it over to young people and enabling them to co-create. I think that one of the things that business might say is that young people probably aren't coming out with the life skills that they need the transferable skills to be able to be successful in the workplace. And for me, we've created an underclass of young people who, if you don't get 5 A to C at GCSE, you're kind of a little bit behind the curveball before you start. And I think technology presents a democratising tool, a way of actually, if you create an app or a website or a piece of hardware, nobody really cares about what your background story is. And actually, if the more interesting it is, the potentially more traction you would get with that. So I think that I would want to see it drop a bomb on the education system personally. Sorry.
Can I provide a synthesising note as well? Because I think the question of radical versus improving, you're probably completely right. In the developed world, we've got a lot of vested interests and there's a lot of very big things to kind of lose if we disrupt things too much. In the developing world, that's not always the case. But there's lots of really interesting conversations going on in places like Brazil, where they've got really poor infrastructure, really poor education, distribution of education, loads of money, and there's big questions about whether they leapfrog our whole industrialised model of education and move on to the next paradigm, we use that word a few times tonight, without us. And actually that's what will disrupt us, because actually we'll be outcompeted in all sorts of ways by education systems that don't frankly really properly exist right now. So watch out. Another question, yes, there was one here.
You touched on the point, Charles, that sort of changes in education are following the money, so following whether students are the kind of work that will make the kind of workforce that companies want to hire, or they've got the right skills for jobs. So in that sense, do you think that change will happen from a university level and then will go downwards, because that's where there's the most direct impact of whether you're suitable for jobs? Or do you think that companies will find different ways of testing whether people have the right skills to test whether their education is viable for roles?
If I could just summarise, what you're trying to say is the demand side coming from employers.
Yeah.
Will that have a sort of trickle-down effect via university degrees? And
do you think that's how change will happen?
Maybe related to kind of like 100 million unemployed graduates across Europe, something like that, yeah. Anybody got an answer to that?
What do you think? Do you think that companies will change how they test?
Or that they already are, in lots of instances?
Yeah.
Anyone want to? Yeah, do it. Employability.
I went to, as a youth worker, to go to Bloomberg was quite a rare occurrence. So I went to an event about apprenticeships there, and there was a thing about graduate apprenticeships, which to me was a bit of a kind of, I didn't quite get that, because for me an apprenticeship was designed for people that potentially weren't going down a formal education route. But there was a huge focus on this. So I think that actually your point is that employers are already starting to look at ways of changing the game for, to get the best calibre of students. We speak to employers about kind of how we would create an environment where young people potentially would gain the skills, and they're not particularly interested in diversifying. They want to make sure, Google, we have a few of their guys who come and run code class for us. And I don't know that they're particularly interested in the diversification of the workforce. They just want to make sure that they're getting the best quality that's out there. So I think that it will always be, those companies will always drive kind of demand.
Charlotte, you wanted to...
Can I suggest that it might be something even different? That they're looking at their teams and they're looking at who fits in better and who accelerates the capability they've already got in their teams, rather than actually testing them and saying, right, yeah, they're an engineer, yeah, they do this, yeah, they do that. Actually, more they're going, they trial them out for a bit, like if you were. Anyway, they'll trial them out for a bit, see if they fit with the team, and whether they, and see how the team copes with that, and then take them, select them.
Yeah, I think that that actually there's been a drive for vocational qualifications to be increased in status for years, and that has never happened. And that's been going on for about 20, 30 years. And I think actually it probably isn't going to happen. And probably the reason is that the traditional academic subjects will always be preferred by the politicians, because the voters are middle class and middle aged and have those kind of jobs, so naturally think that they're all important. So I think what will happen is, and you can see it for the last 5 years, what will happen in the next 5 years is there'll be more focus on academic subjects, and that the qualification for the education system is not driven by the employers, actually it's driven by the politics, which is not something I agree with at all, but actually I think that's the reality. It would be a lot better if we could have more vocational qualifications and more degrees and subjects that were relevant to industry, which is what I think you were suggesting. I think that would be a much, much better situation, so that we had useful degrees that were done by students, rather than lots of degrees done by students and sold to students that weren't actually relevant when they graduate.